Jesus was just a man, and your belief in him is outdated and foolish. These were the shocking words hurled at Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, during a live TV interview. The host's smirk was palpable, his intent clear: to provoke and humiliate. But what happened next left the studio in stunned silence. Leavitt's response wasn't just a defense of her faith. It was a masterclass in grace under fire that would soon have the whole nation talking. Are you prepared to see how one young woman's unwavering belief changed the conversation on faith in America? The liberal TV host's voice cut through the room like a challenge too bold to ignore, his eyes locking on Karoline Leavitt. She stood tall, a young, unapologetically faithful leader at the heart of a crowded room after her press conference. All eyes followed his words to the simple, gleaming cross necklace she wore, a symbol of her faith, her belief in God, and her unshakable courage. The studio lights dimmed, casting long shadows across faces. A hush fell as the host's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a smirk. Leavitt stood firm, her necklace catching the light. His voice, sharp as a blade, broke the silence. "Miss Leavitt," he began, condescension dripping from every word, "how can you, an educated woman in the 21st century, still cling to the fairy tale of a man who walked on water?" Leavitt's fingers brushed her necklace, a gesture as potent as David selecting his stones before Goliath. Her eyes, steady and clear, met the host's challenging gaze. The audience held its breath, anticipating an outburst or tears, but Leavitt's response defied expectations. Her voice, soft yet unwavering, filled the room. "My faith isn't a crutch or a fairy tale," she began, measured and deliberate. "It's the foundation of who I am, shaping my values and guiding my actions. It's about walking with integrity, compassion, and purpose. My faith challenges me to be a better person, to serve others, and to stand firm in my convictions." The studio fell silent, her words sinking in. Even those who didn't share her beliefs nodded in respect. The host, visibly taken aback, struggled to regain his footing. He had come prepared for a battle of wits, armed with sharp quips and sarcasm. Instead, he faced a quiet strength that defied his expectations. Leavitt's calm demeanor contrasted starkly with the host's increasingly flustered state. She met each question with thoughtful responses that spoke to the heart of her beliefs. "My faith isn't about blind acceptance," she explained, her words resonating with unexpected clarity. "It's about seeking understanding, grappling with difficult questions, and finding meaning in a complex world." As she spoke, the cameras caught subtle shifts in the room. Skeptical audience members leaned forward, hanging on her every word. The host's aggressive stance softened imperceptibly as he found himself drawn into a conversation far deeper than anticipated. Leavitt's words bridged divides, inviting others to consider faith in a modern context. She spoke of reconciling ancient teachings with contemporary issues, of the ongoing journey her faith demanded. "I don't have all the answers," she admitted, her honesty disarming. "But my faith gives me a framework to approach life's big questions with humility and an open heart." As the segment closed, the studio's atmosphere had transformed. What began as an attempt to mock had become a powerful testament to personal conviction. Leavitt's grace under pressure had not only defended her faith, but opened the door to a more nuanced conversation about belief in the public sphere. The host leaned forward, his earlier bravado replaced by a hint of desperation. "But surely you can't deny that religion has been used to justify terrible things throughout history," he pressed, his voice carrying a mix of challenge and curiosity. Karoline Leavitt nodded, acknowledging the weight of the question. "You're right to point out the misuse of religion," she began, her voice calm and measured. "But consider this. Throughout history, we've seen countless ideologies twisted to justify atrocities. Communism, nationalism, even secular philosophies have been used to rationalize violence and oppression. The real question is how we as individuals interpret and apply our beliefs." As Leavitt spoke, the cameras panned across the audience. Expressions of surprise and thoughtful consideration replaced the earlier skepticism. The young press secretary had managed to shift the conversation from a simple attack on religion to a broader examination of human nature, and the potential for corruption in any system of belief. When we single out religion as the sole source of historical wrongdoing, Leavitt continued, we ignore the complexities of human nature and the myriad factors that contribute to conflict and injustice. It's a simplistic view that fails to account for the positive contributions of faith communities throughout history in education, healthcare, social justice, and humanitarian efforts. The host attempted to interject, but Leavitt gently held her ground. If we're to have an honest conversation, we must acknowledge our own biases. It's easy to point fingers at the failures of others while overlooking the shortcomings in our own worldviews. She paused, her expression softening. In that moment, the studio fell silent, hanging on her every word. You know, Leavitt began, her voice tinged with vulnerability, I've grappled with these questions myself. When I was 16, my best friend was diagnosed with a terminal illness. I struggled to reconcile my faith with the suffering I saw. I questioned everything I believed, Leavitt continued. But instead of abandoning my faith, I dove deeper. I sought out different perspectives, engaged with challenging texts, and had countless conversations with people who disagreed with me. My faith grew stronger, not because I ignored the difficult questions, but because I confronted them head-on. Her candor seemed to catch the host off guard. He leaned back, his earlier aggression melting into genuine interest. So how do you reconcile the good and bad aspects of religious history? He asked, his tone now more curious than confrontational. Leavitt smiled, appreciating the shift in the conversation. By recognizing that faith, like any powerful force, reflects the best and worst of humanity. It's not about denying the dark chapters of religious history, but about learning from them and striving to embody the highest ideals of our beliefs. As the segment drew to a close, it was clear that this conversation had evolved into something far more profound than anyone had anticipated. The initial attempt to mock and discredit had transformed into a thoughtful dialogue about the role of faith in public life, the importance of critical thinking, and the need for mutual understanding across ideological divides. The studio air crackled with tension, a churning river of discord that seemed impossible to cross. Yet, in that moment, a bridge began to form, not of steel and concrete, but of words and understanding. The host's demeanor softened, his earlier aggression giving way to genuine curiosity. How do you reconcile your faith with the complexities of modern governance? He asked Karoline Leavitt, his voice carrying a new note of respect. Leavitt paused, weighing her words carefully. This was no longer about defending her faith, but about bridging a divide that had long existed in American politics. She began by acknowledging the challenges of balancing personal beliefs with public service, drawing on historical examples to illustrate her point. Throughout our nation's history, leaders have successfully navigated this delicate balance, Leavitt explained, her voice steady and measured. President Jimmy Carter integrated his Christian beliefs into his political decisions, emphasizing morality and ethics in governance. Yet he never lost sight of his duty to represent all Americans, regardless of their faith or lack thereof. The host leaned forward, intrigued. But what about those who don't share your beliefs? How can you represent them fairly? Leavitt's response was measured yet powerful. My commitment to constitutional principles and equal representation is unwavering, she asserted. In fact, my faith compels me to serve all people regardless of their beliefs. It challenges me to be more compassionate, seek justice, and work tirelessly for the common good. She continued, her words carrying a weight that seemed to silence the room. Faith, when approached with humility and openness, can provide a unique lens through which to view complex issues. It can inspire us to consider the long-term implications of our decisions, to think beyond immediate political gains, and to prioritize the well-being of all members of society. Leavitt paused, allowing her words to sink in. I believe the principles of interfaith dialogue, mutual respect, active listening and collaboration are crucial for political discourse. These principles create a safe space for dialogue and address misconceptions about different religions and ideologies. As she spoke, the studio audience began to engage, Hands raised and thoughtful questions emerged that transcended the initial religious debate. One audience member asked, "How can we foster this kind of respectful dialogue in our own communities?" Leavitt's eyes lit up at the question. "It starts with each of us being willing to listen and learn," she responded. "Studies have shown that interfaith dialogue initiatives lead to increased tolerance and reduced prejudice. Imagine if we applied these principles to our political discussions." The host, now fully invested in the conversation, added, "Recent polls indicate that a significant portion of the American public believes faith should play a role in politics. What do you make of that?" Leavitt nodded thoughtfully. "Those numbers reflect a desire for leaders guided by moral and ethical beliefs, but it's crucial to understand that this doesn't mean imposing one's faith on others. Instead, it's about bringing the best of our beliefs, compassion, integrity, service, to our roles as public servants." As the segment drew to a close, it was clear that this exchange had evolved into something far more profound than anyone had anticipated. What began as a confrontational interview had transformed into a masterclass in respectful dialogue and mutual understanding. As the credits rolled, a profound silence settled over the nation. Leavitt's graceful stand resonated far beyond the studio walls, touching hearts and minds across the country. Her composure and respect, even in the face of mockery, demonstrated a strength that transcended mere defensiveness. The confrontation had become a catalyst for reflection. Viewers were left to ponder, how might our public discourse evolve if we approached our deepest disagreements with this same spirit of openness? Studies show such respectful dialogue can change public opinion, fostering understanding and reducing polarization. Leavitt's approach now stands as a beacon for inclusivity in a fractured world, offering a powerful model for navigating the complex intersection of belief and public service.